Welcome back to another fantastic episode of the Prolific Super Producer Podcast. That's right. After over 20 episodes, I can say the name of our podcast. Let's go. That's the win. Hey, if you're here, we are pumped to bring this content to you today. This is such a big topic, and we're hitting it right halfway through this year. Summer slump is real. All that kind of the creative resistance can be at its highest this season. But it's not over. It's not too late. We got a game plan. We want to help you get back on track and just help you actually do the things you said you wanted to do about 6 months ago. Okay? So before we start, if any of your goals, which I'm assuming it does if you're clicking in on this podcast, if any of your goals have to do with making songs, like turning ideas into WAV files, check this out. I have a free guide for you to help you hold your hand if you need it, or kick your butt if you need it, whatever. I tried to write the line in this guide where you can go from nothing, from scratch, all the way to a fully finished song, okay? And if you go to finishsongsguide.com, I'll make sure I say the URL again, finishsongsguide.com, you can grab this PDF and it will help you bust out more songs than you ever have. Commit to the second half of this year making more songs than you did the first half. And maybe you just need to switch up your workflow to get there. So if you're feeling a little bit stale, any of that kind of stuff, that's exactly how I was feeling. It's exactly why I made this guide, because it's the very workflow that I used to bust out an entire album, 14 tracks in 3 months. I did a song a week using this workflow with a full-time job, with family responsibilities, all that kind of stuff. You can do it too, all right? So that's for you. I just want to give that gift right off the bat to kick off this episode, okay? But let's dive in, Tyson. Okay, how you doing, Tyson? What's up, man?
Yeah, it's life. I probably haven't completed all my goals for the first half of the year, so I am definitely looking forward to crushing the rest of my goals in 2024. So I'm hoping that our conversation today will get me going as well to crush the rest of the year. So yeah.
Let's get after it.
But overall, not bad. Hopefully, I got some huge wins in the first half of 2024, which has yet to happen as we're filming this. So
that's right.
I'm but
this is kind of fun. Yeah, like full transparency, right? Like we're batch filming, so we're filming this well before this time period this episode is coming out. But nonetheless, we have both we're fellow creatives. We've been halfway through the year and felt all these things. So we just thought, hey, this would be a very cool thing to put out there, pulling from both of our experiences and all this stuff, and just to help you. Because it breaks my heart when I see creatives just like start really strong at the beginning of the year and then fall off and then just kind of like die the whole rest of the year. And it's like, well, get it next January 2025. It's like, no, you don't have to do that. We don't want you to do that. Okay. So I think it's got to start with, to kick this off, I think you just got to hit pause for a second, sit in that comfy chair of yours, go to that coffee shop, go look at that lake or whatever, find your spot where you have your inner peace. And you need to do a check-in. You need to do a check-in with yourself. Like, you've got to just stop moving, physically pause your body, quiet your mind, and ask yourself, like, where are you? Like, what did you set out to do at the beginning of the year? And where are you right now? Right? Is it a big gap? Like, you didn't even do anything? That's okay. There's still hope. Is it a smaller gap? You did a little bit, and you still got some more to go? That's fine. You can get back up on the horse. Or did you kind of start taking some action and now you're realizing, oh, what I said I wanted to do at the beginning of the year, I actually don't want to do that anymore because I kind of started doing it and it made me think of this other thing that I think is a lot better. Cool. But then now this sounds like a pivot and you might need to kind of get back in that mindset that you were at the beginning of the year to create a game plan for this new thing you want to execute on, right? So right here, Tyson, I think, right, this is where it starts. We got to do a check-in. You got to like just pause for a second and ask yourself these very basic, measurable questions so that you can actually figure out, like you can place yourself. Okay, that's where I want to go and I'm right here. So now I got to think about how I'm going to go forward. In a sense, it's like coming to grips with the past is the past. Give yourself a little bit of grace. Life happens. Don't be super duper hard on yourself, but kind of like let it go. All right, we're starting from right here. Treat this as your January 1. All right, how am I going to go from here to where I want to go in those 6 months? I'd be curious to hear about you, Tyson. Like, how do you think about this stuff, or how have you learned maybe to think about this stuff as the years have gone on, and like, just hitting a point like this where you know where you want to go and maybe you didn't make the progress you wanted to. How do you go about thinking about how to get there?
Yeah, definitely. So I'm going to share a couple things that have really, really made, honestly, my whole life move forward. Because before, especially when I was like early college, I had these like, massive aspirations to write a ton of music, like release tons of albums, just do all the music stuff. And I would set these just ridiculous, overwhelming goals. Like one spring break, I decided I'm like, this spring break, I'm going to write, record, produce, mix, master, and release an entire album in one spring break. In 7 days, 7 days, I'm going to release a 10-song album. That means I'm going to write, record, mix, master, like a song and a half a day over this spring break. Right. It's an unrealistic goal to do well. And so I would just set myself up for failure by setting these unrealistic goals. So I think the check-in is super powerful. The things that have really made the difference for me is getting in an environment that is helpful, that's calm, peaceful, but that is not your usual go-to place. So if you're normally in your studio when you're thinking about music, don't go to your studio. Go to a coffee shop. If you're normally at a coffee shop when you're thinking about music, don't go to the coffee shop. Go to either a different coffee shop, go to the river, go to the ocean. I don't know, wherever you're at. Go to someplace else. That is helpful. That it basically allows your mind to not be stimulated by your environment, to think about the things you normally do in that environment. So that's the kind of the whole reason. So do a check-in. Think about what your goals were, if you even had goals, right? This assumes you had goals from the beginning of the year. But think about those and recognize that even though you may have not made very much progress, it is not too late to make progress in the rest of the year. So
let's go.
Again, like Nathan said, give yourself a little bit of grace for not having completed those, but let's get serious about completing those for the rest of the year, because I know you have it in you, but you just need a little bit of help, and hopefully we're here today to give you that help, to get back on track, to get remotivated, and ultimately pursue after your goals. A little bit more on motivation later, but let's dive into how to make this super actionable and practical for you to actually finish your goals for the rest of the year. So, first of all, let's identify what your goals actually are for the rest of the year. And then
revolutionary.
one of my buddies, his name is Matt, and he is an EDM producer. He produces under the name Sonics. So it's Sauniks, if you want to go look him up. Super cool music there especially if you're into EDM. He had decided that where I'm in a mastermind with him, and so it's just like a group of producers. We all get together and we talk about like our goals and our, whatever we want to do for the next year or 6 months or quarter. And then we talk about, how to help each other and, how to think about things. So it's really helpful. But he had, I guess in 2023 or prior to 2023, he had decided that he wanted all of us to make annual goals, which we normally did. But he said, instead of making annual goals of the outcome, make annual goals broken down into the actions I would need to take to make those goals unreasonable to meet. Let me explain. You're basically operationalizing success because you're breaking down your goal into the actual specific actions you need to take to achieve that goal. For example, if I want to do, be able to do 100 push-ups without stopping in the next 3 months, what will I need to do? I will need to work out my chest and my arms. I will probably need to do push-ups. And if I do 100 push-ups every single day, maybe not all in one set, but if I do 100 push-ups every single day for the next 3 months, I will probably be able to do 100 push-ups all in a row by the end of the 3 months. It's likely because I will have trained out those muscles so much over the next 3 months. It's the same way with your goals in music. If I want to release an album by the end of the year that just crushes, then I will need to write a lot of songs, probably in excess of how many I'm going to release on the album, in order to write songs that are going to be good enough to be on my album to then produce, mix, master, and release. And so if I commit to writing consistently then all of a sudden I will be able to fulfill that goal. It'll be unreasonable that I don't have enough songs to then finish my album by the end of the year. So hopefully that makes a little bit more sense. Nathan, I'm not sure if you can add anything to make that a little bit more clear, actionable for people.
No, dude, totally. I think that was very clear. And I think that this is actually something that I am really doing for 2024. So by the time this episode comes out, I guess we'll see how this is going for me over here. But I'm really excited about this because I feel like this has been a mistake on my part. Like I have typically made, those big New Year's goals off numbers and off, off of the results. That's what it is. Off of the results. So it's like, X number of, placements, like placements in the sync world or for, whatever. So X number of placements, X number of streams, maybe could be some people's goals, like, X number of subscribers, if so you do YouTube, or X number of followers on social media. So like very numbers metric focused, as opposed to, I love this, what's the action taken that is responsible for the result, and make the action taking the goal. So instead of 100,000 followers or 100,000 monthly listeners on Spotify or something crazy like that, it's like, what has to be true for me to have 100,000 monthly listeners on Spotify? That's a much better question. It's like, what has to be true to warrant that number? Oh, okay. Then all of a sudden you're thinking about the things you have to do, the action you have to take. And that's the only way that you get from where you are to where you want to go, is by taking the action. If you're just in your brain, right? Like it actually isn't true. Thoughts don't become things until you like start moving your body and you start using your hands and you start creating the stuff, right? So it's like, okay, 100,000 monthlies. That probably means I'm going to have to like figure out marketing is probably a big deal. Like I don't have to tell Tyson that, right? Like that's probably a big deal. Like I'm going to have to find some way for my music to get out there. What are the actions responsible for that? Well, I could learn about Facebook ads if I wanted to. I could be posting content. Oh, content. Okay. So content is an action that I can take that would correlate eventually, right? Ideally, in theory, to that number. Oh, I'm probably going to need songs written too, right? I can't just not put out music and, you know what I mean? Like, okay, so songs are a big deal. All right. So how can I make that the goal to get, finish a song a month or something like that? Whatever it is, like making those, the action taken, the goals, I think is a game changer. I believe it's going to be, and I have to be honest, I'm speaking from aspiring hopes that I have for this for myself. I believe it will work for me because it just makes a lot of freaking sense. But I love that. I love that so much. I think it's so sick. Okay, so like thinking about our habits and thinking about the actions that we take. There's this one quote that I want to say real quick before we move on. It just popped in my head, and it's again from Napoleon Hill. I just talked about Napoleon in the last episode. I guess he's just on top of the old noggin right now. But Napoleon Hill wrote the book Think and Grow Rich. Again, I can't endorse the entire book. I think some of it's kind of weird and wacky, but some parts are really cool, and some parts I think are rather thought-provoking. He has this quote where he's like, he's basically saying, don't kid yourself. You don't control your future. You control your habits, and your habits control your future. Right? Like you don't get to, we have this crazy idea, especially here, like in the US, where it's like, you pilot your own ship. You're the captain of your own ship. You take on that ocean. It's like, bro, it's a freaking ocean. What are you talking about? I'm not God. I can't tell the ocean what to do. The ocean could just decide to have a crazy big storm and there goes Nathan. You know what I'm saying? So much for captaining my own ship. You know what I'm saying? So I can't control the weather. I can't control the waves. I can't control the conditions, aka the results and numbers and stuff. But I can control the kind of boat that I choose. I can control the people I bring with me. I can control who I choose as my crew. I could control, you know what I'm saying? Like there are things you can control, and that's what you got to focus on. So especially when it comes to habits, taking action, that's, I think, the way that you actually get to where you want to go. Not just the idea that, so like just charting the waters into territory where you don't control the conditions, but you can control the actions that you take. So anyway. This leads to a fascinating, unless you had anything there, Tyson, before.
Yeah, I want to add a couple things. So,
let's go.
I think that the idea of having a goal is really good, right? So having those external measures is a great place to start. But as we're saying, like, it's not a great place to end for a couple reasons. One, you can't control outside factors necessarily. And but it does give you an overall direction of like, what do I ultimately, want to move towards? And so that's really good. But then you want to operationalize that or make it actionable steps of how do I actually get there, right? So if I want 100 monthly listeners, I probably have to release content consistently. So I have to create content, once a day, or, have enough content to post once a day. And then I need to, write songs, and then I need to, figure out how to get those songs mixed and mastered. And, obviously, we can break that down into the individual steps that we need to take in order to achieve that ultimate goal. Why I want to camp on here for just a second is because I want you to recognize setting unrealistic goals, like, younger Tyson was writing an album in a week. Like that was, younger Tyson's goal.
Yeah.
Recognizing that that's unrealistic, because if I actually thought about how to actually do that, it would be unreasonable. I'd have to work 20 hours a day and then probably still end up with a substandard result for that album. And so, making sure that if you're not willing to do this same action for a year, then don't do it for a day. Make sure that it fits realistically into your life of the actions you need to take. And if you recognize that, if I want 1 million monthly listeners and I have 0 today, right, that it's almost an unrealistic goal in just 1 year. Is it possible in the next 3 years? Yeah, probably, but it's not realistic in the next 6 months. So make sure you're setting realistic goals that you can reasonably achieve, and you can take reasonable actions to then achieve that goal. Okay. So I want to just, make sure I wanted to camp on there for just a second, because I think this is a tremendous, pitfall of a lot of people. They just set too many unrealistic goals and then never achieve them. And then they're disappointed when they don't achieve those goals, because that's their measure of success. The second thing that I want to mention here is that by changing your goal from the outcome to the action, is that you can 100% control it, and that you can measure it based on your own effort. So even if I don't reach my, ultimate goal of 100 monthly listeners, if I consistently created content and I consistently made songs and I finished all of the actions that I told myself I would do, that is success. So it doesn't matter on outside factors. I can still be satisfied with what I did, because my measure of success was the actions that I took and the discipline that I had to take those actions.
It's
and then that
your
will
psychology.
build, right. And it builds up this identity in yourself of an action taker, of a successful person. And that is huge. And because any other goal that you set for yourself from here on out is going to be easier to achieve, because you know that you can take action and be consistent in moving towards your goals, even if the outside factors don't necessarily come to play exactly as you thought they would, which they rarely do. Let's be honest.
Let's be real. Yes. I dig that, man.
Sometimes they're dramatically better, but most of the time they're somewhat worse, but generally not 0.
Yes.
So, anyway.
Yes. Oh, so good. Hey, this kind of leads me to think about, with this fascinating thing that I had forgotten about, and you reminded me when we were planning out this episode, this word priority. And there's kind of there's a fascinating history to the word priority. And I'm sure we're all familiar with what that means, right? Like keeping the main thing, right? Like, but could you talk a little bit about this and explain it? Because it was, I'd heard about this, just totally forgot about it. But this is super helpful in light of the goals we're talking about, in light of 6 months, less left of the year. I think a big piece of this to crushing the rest of the year is to figure out the priority. So what's that little tidbit about priority?
Right. So, we need to ensure that we're taking the right priority, because if we have one goal, right, we need to, as we've talked about, build actions to move us towards that goal. And we need to understand what our main objective is. If we don't have that clearly outlined, so say I want to, start a business, and I want to release an album, and I want to work on another project with another guy, and I'm in a band, and I, am a father and husband, and I also want to, do some hot yoga, and I want to also be a bodybuilder, all in the next 6 months. It's like, okay, any reasonable person would tell you you're trying to take on too much, and because you're so scattered, you're you're not going to achieve anything. So hence the word priority comes into play. So the history of the word, as Nathan alluded to, is super fascinating. Back in the day, before, I think it was 1930 or somewhere around there, in the first half of the century in the 1900s, this word was always a singular. There was no such thing as priorities. There was only priority. Meaning that if you have multiple priorities, it's no longer a priority.
It's no longer a priority.
It may be important to you, but it's no longer a priority. So, and I think that this is a tremendously helpful thing to understand, is that generally if you lack time, it has nothing to do with the time. It has to do with your priority. Somebody 10 steps ahead of you doesn't have any more time than you. They just have more focus, and they have their priorities straight in that moment in their life to achieve that goal. So there was something that's very helpful for me when I was, super scattered and I needed to get focused. And I still struggle with this. But one thing that was super helpful for me was this concept that I learned from a guy named Dan Henry. He's a internet marketing guru type guy. He's really good at internet marketing. And he became really good at internet marketing because he was able to develop focus. And so he has this very helpful framework. It's called the circle of focus. So imagine that your entire focus is the shape of a pizza. It's this big circle. And then you decide that you want to be, you want to get really good at mixing, and you also want to get really good at singing, and you also want to, learn some Facebook ads for musicians, and then you also want to create content. So you have all these priorities, again, priorities.
Plural, yeah.
And now all of a sudden, each of those things, I have 4 different items, is taking up a 1/4 of my focus. And it's like putting 25% of my effort into one thing. Have you ever experienced success putting only 25% effort into something?
That's a slow burn, man. Yeah,
maybe. I achieved a little bit, but it wasn't meaningful in any one direction.
Significant,
Right. And even if you have, only 25% of your time allocated to that thing, then you probably are actually taking more of your pie. One of those items is probably disproportionate because you're thinking about it when you're doing something else. So when I'm working on my mixing skills, I'm thinking about the content that I'm supposed to be creating over here. And therefore, I'm actually, shrinking my overall ability to focus at a time. So the practical, taking this home a little bit, is when you decide I have a goal, focus on one thing at a time. This doesn't mean that you can't create content and produce music. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is keep those separate and focus on one at a time. So, for example, if my goal is to post one reel every single day or one TikTok every single day, I'm going to batch that content. I'm going to focus on it for an entire day. I'm going to take one Saturday, I'm going to block out my calendar, and I'm going to focus on just creating reels. Once I've created all those reels, I have enough for the entire month. I can easily create 30 reels in one day if you focus. And then the rest of the month, I can focus on producing music. So this is where the circle of focus comes into play. You want to operationalize or systematize a certain aspect of your actions that you're taking, and then focus on it until it's done, and then move on, right? Even though it's recurring, I can do it once a month. One day a month, I can focus on content and have all the content I possibly need for the following month. So, any thoughts there, Nathan, Dad?
Totally. Yeah, no, it's so good. And I so sucked at this for a long time. And the needle really didn't start to move in my life until I learned this kind of this kind of taboo word. And I'm sorry, I'm about to curse for the first time on the Prolific Super Producer podcast, but I had to learn how to say no. Oh, I know. Sorry. Was that hard to hear? Cover the kids' ears, yeah, I had to learn to say no. I was such a yes man. I would say yes to anything and everything. And fellow songwriter, I'm not talking about just music stuff. I'm not talking about just music stuff. I'm talking about like just life stuff. I would say yes to something somebody asked me to do at my church. I would say yes to meeting up with my dad for breakfast. I would say yes to helping my mom move in with something. I would say yes to helping my brother make his own song because he's getting into songwriting. And hey, I make songs. Yeah, sure. I'll help you. Why not? Come use the studio. And then I would say yes to, that thing that my wife wanted me to do. And, just saying like the just accrual of all of the commitments I was making, like I was like, oh, no wonder I don't feel like I have time to actually work on music or work on my goals, because it's dispersed. It went to all these other areas, all these other people. And I had to learn to say no. I had to learn to fight for my own creative time, because the reality is, if you learn about anybody who's like super duper successful, or is someone you admire, or someone you'd love to, emulate, like, you just don't get above average results by saying yes to everything. You just don't. Like, at some points, that person you admire has got to say, okay, there was a season I really focused. There was a season I did this. That's why that's a common theme in a lot of people's stories, is because they realized, hey, time is valuable. Time is the resource, like Tyson said. It's like, everyone gets the same amount, right? Like, everyone gets the same amount. And the thing about time is it's not replenishable. If you lose money, you can go get more money, right? If you lose time, there it went, right? Like, you can't replenish that resource. So realizing how important that is, I actually just a couple years ago started saying no. And I started saying no. It's easy to say no to things that you weren't actually really excited about. Like, that's cool. I didn't really want to go help Grandma Susan do what, like, whatever. Like, you could say, no. But it's hard to say no to good things. I enjoyed working out with my brother every morning, together. And we did that for a long time. But it was taking 2 hours out of my day, because it was a half-hour drive to the gym, half-hour drive back, an hour workout. There's 2 hours of my day, right? And saying no to, like, helping out at the church in certain ways, and saying no to meeting up with people as consistently, because I just finally got to this point where I was fed up with not making any significant progress in where I wanted to go. And it's just okay to say no to other people. I think that's why I was like kind of just poking a little bit of fun. Like no is a curse word, because we just like, sometimes it's hard for people to hear it because we just don't say it a lot. But no is a super powerful, positive word, and you can say no gracefully. If you struggle with this, one of the phrases that I would use consistently, if someone was like, hey, do you want to hang out this week? I would reply back and be like, hey man, that sounds fun. I'm fully committed this week though. I'm fully committed. I love saying that word. I'm fully committed this week. I'm fully committed on Wednesday. And it just like communicates, like in a way that like, yeah, I've got other things going on. And so you can be kind, and you can, even if you got family or close people, like to my brother, someone like that, I would say, dude, I love working out with you, man. It's just taking a lot of time. And I've got these things that I really need to work towards, and I'm going to have to let this go for right now. Maybe we can pick it up down the road. I just think this is something not a lot of people are willing to do because it can get uncomfortable. But if you're looking for time, and the first 6 months did not go how you wanted it to go, you have a choice right now. You get to choose how you're going to show up in your own life. You get to choose how you're going to handle your own time. No one is forcing you to do anything. There's no rule book. You haven't signed any long-term contracts, right? Like, you get to choose. So, encouragement for me in regards to all of this, to be able to have a priority, right? And then other things that are important to you is maybe look at all the things you've said yes to, because having a priority means saying no. It comes with the territory. And to do it well and to actually prioritize it, you're going to have to say no to other things in order to honor the thing that you're choosing to prioritize. So that was kind of my 2 cents there, and just kind of what I've been going through recently in regards to all that kind of stuff. So good stuff, man. I'm going to listen to this episode when I need to get a little pick me up. You know what I'm saying? Hot dog.
Yeah. Oh. No, I think that's super, super valuable. And learning that skill will move you forward probably more than anything else will. And inherently recognizing that when you say yes to something, you already are saying no to something else. So a great way to identify somebody's priorities is to take a look at their bank account, where they're spending their money, and where they're spending their time. So their bank account and their calendar, if you look at those two things, you'll know where somebody's priorities truly lie. And so if you're saying your priority is to make music over the next 6 months, but your bank account and your calendar disagree with that, then that's not truly your priority. Your priority might be having coffee with your friend Sally, or having, going to the gym and working out. Not those are bad things. Those are good things. But you have to recognize that by inherently saying yes to those, you're saying no to your other goals of making music. Okay, let's move on.
Let us.
So we are currently, as the time this episode airs, in the middle of summer. So this is going to be like June or maybe July. I'm not sure. There's the 26-week mark, though, so we're exactly halfway through the year. And that means that it's summertime, and summertime comes with its own potential issues. So it's very easy to get lost with your goals in the summertime. So part of the reason why we timed this episode for right now is because we want to make sure that you're still sticking to your goals, the actions that you know you need to take for the rest of the year, even throughout the summertime, because it's very easy to get lost in, summer parties, barbecues, going to the lake, going to the river, wherever, you hang out in the summertime, unless you're weird like us and just hide in your studio all day anyway. It's too real. It's too real. I don't get enough. Bro.
That's a whole other episode.
I take vitamin D in the summer because I still don't get enough sun.
Dude, you gotta get outside, bro.
I know, it's bad.
Yeah, all right.
Anyway.
But it's true. The summertime stuff is real, right? Like, because what's going on? This is usually, a lot of vacations. If you got family, schools out, it's just warm. There's a lot more activities to do, depending on where you are, I guess, But summertime, it's also kind of like, here's the other thing that this might be interesting, Tyson, like, maybe even if you and your family aren't quite engaging in a lot of those activities, or even if you're still able to hold down your schedule that you started, it can be difficult because a lot of other people around you, whether who you follow on social media or who you interact with on a weekly basis, like friends, family, they might be partaking in the summer activities and leaving and traveling and spending money and doing whatever. And just take a break. Just come on. Like that kind of stuff. That has almost been more of the issue. For whatever reason, I can kind of get insulated, and it's like I don't feel the pull within myself to just like go on a cruise for 4 weeks or something. But it's like hearing that other people are, seeing what other people are doing, engaging in some good fun things. Well, I think that's fine to do, and you should absolutely do that. I'm not saying be a total recluse, but that's what's gotten me. It's like, oh, they're doing it, I should too. It's like this fear of missing out, the FOMO. I feel the FOMO in summertime, so I know for me as a creative, that's my weakness. Is I'll be like, oh man, why don't I just go do that? Like music will be here when I get back, and you start to rationalize and make excuses for yourself, quite honestly, of why you shouldn't continue working here. And I think it's cool because summertime, hey, if you want. I don't know if it can be a helpful thing to think about what most people do and then do the opposite. And you might actually get more results than what most people do. And so like if most people are kind of chilling and kind of clocking out and leaving the group chats, so to speak, like then you have an opportunity to like get ahead of some people, and because you're choosing to do things that most people aren't doing. So I think the summertime, as much as I have fallen victim to it, I'm learning, and my goal for 2024 is to try to stay focused, to try to keep cruising, just keep cruising, just keep swimming, right, all the way through summertime, because of how much ground you might be able to make up, and because of what other people aren't doing. You know what I mean? I don't know. What do you think about that?
How do you handle so I'm going to challenge you. I'm going to call you out right now.
Oh no.
You just said
I can handle it.
I'm going to try this summer.
You got me.
To do something. You can't Yoda. Try anything. You either take the action or you don't. It's like the old Yoda, right?
Dude, Yoda over
There's
here.
There's do or do not. There is no try. Or whatever.
Jedi Master like. Tyson with the flip. Okay.
But, I mean, all in reality, like, I was actually listening to an old sermon a while back, and the pastor was talking about this whole thing. Like he had saw his therapist, and he was saying that his therapist would tell him like, oh, like go do this, like in your life or whatever. And he would say like, okay, I'll try to do that. And his therapist would call him out every single time. He would say like, no, like you either train it or you don't do it. Like there's no try. You have to train that habit into yourself to then be able to do this thing. And so,
so good.
That's one thing is when you tell yourself, I'm going to try to do this, it means that is not a truly a priority and you're not going to do it. There's
a built-in escape clause.
And maybe you should not do it. If you're going to just try to do something, just say, no, I'm not going to.
I'm good.
Just no, right?
Just no. Yeah, just no. No to yourself.
Yeah, exactly. And just be honest with where you're at, because there's been so many times where, an artist has asked me to do something and I'm like, oh, I don't really want to do it, but I'll try, right? It's like, I'm not going to do it. And that sets up a bad expectation for them, because they're like, oh, like maybe Tyson will do this for me. But it's like, in reality, no, I'm not going to do it.
Yeah.
So I should just be honest with them and set up an expectation of, no, like I am busy. I have other commitments that I have dedicated my time to. I'm already committed to other things. So therefore, I'm going to tell you, no, you have an expectation that you're not going to get that thing out of me, rather than disappointment that I didn't do it for you when I said I might do it. So just setting those realistic expectations for both yourself and other people is just the grown-up thing to do. So put on your big boy, put on your big girl pants, and just do it. Okay.
Yo, now that we got Jedi Master Tyson fired up in here, present folks, I have to ask. I'm going to bring up a topic that triggers him a little bit, and me too. But it's good. It's for your own benefit. Okay, so how you were talking, Tyson, made me think of summertime, and made me think of just some of our fellow artists, and I'm guilty of saying this too, but have been like, I just don't feel motivated right now. I'm not inspired. I'm tired. The summertime, like I'm tired. I don't feel inspired right now. I just want to go. I just want to do something else. Or lack of motivation, lack of inspiration in the summertime. In the hot months and stuff. Like, I think that's totally something a lot of people will say. And I've definitely used that before too. I don't anymore, but I would love to hear what, well, I know what you're going to say, but I want our listeners to hear.
Okay. So I had a mentor who always told me habit over motivation, because I can be motivated for a week, but how many things can you accomplish in a week if you're motivated? Maybe I can make a few YouTube videos. I could make a few pieces of content, but that's not going to do anything. I'm going to get like 20 views from those videos. We were just talking actually before we started this episode of how long it took to build both of our YouTube channels. We don't have massive YouTube channels. We're not like Mr. Beast or anything.
Sure.
But even to achieve the small amount of success we have, it took us months. For me, it took me a year before I got any traction at all on my YouTube videos. If you go back, if you want to see some really embarrassing stuff, go back on my YouTube channel.
Mine too.
And look at the first videos. They all have 5, maybe 10 views on each video. I've had videos that got 1 view, and that was myself making sure I didn't make any mistakes in the video. So nobody watched that video except for me. So that being said, motivation will get you to the starting line, but no further. And the habit that you develop based on that initial motivation is going to be the thing that carries you through.
Yeah.
So if you're relying on motivation to do anything, you will fail. You're going to fall on your face. You're not going to achieve your goals. Yeah. And I'm coming to you as I'm preaching to myself 3 years ago, 4 years ago, because I would rely so much on motivation. If I wasn't feeling something, I just wouldn't do it. But in reality, you have to do certain actions for a long time to see results. There's another example of, trying to get clients for my studio when I first started. I would cold call and cold message, cold email people to try to get a conversation started to, maybe sell them some production services. It's really uncomfortable to do that because most people don't like you doing that.
Yes.
But I inherently knew that I had a service that I could help somebody with. And so I, tried to force myself, tried to get motivated to do this. And I would get, 10 emails down the line and be like, it's a lot of work. I don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah.
I'm not motivated. I just want to go, write a song or something. So then I would go and do something else that like made me feel productive, but wasn't actually helpful. And so again, like I never saw any real results in my business, in my music, anywhere in my life without being fully committed to doing the actions that it took to reach the goal. This is why we made this whole episode, right?
Yeah.
Motivation will fail you after a little while. Yeah. You're constantly changing. Your hormones change constantly. Even as a guy, your hormones aren't the same at 5 a.m. as they are at 5 p.m. at night. So motivation is going to fade probably in like an hour, realistically, from when you started. You might get into something and do it for a couple hours, but if you're relying on motivation, if you're relying on inspiration, it won't last. And you need to build habits around those actions to ultimately get the result. Okay, I'm starting to repeat myself. So Nathan, jump in here.
No, dude, I don't have anything to say except what you said. Like habits over motivation, and this is a big thing that I talk a lot with with people and songwriters and stuff. Is like because there's definitely this notion that nothing gets accomplished unless we're inspired, and that inspiration is the reason for good things happening, and motivation is the reason for good things happening. And I love what you said. I think it can get you to the starting line. I think it's awesome. It's just the thing is, like December 31st, right, versus January 1st. Most people are super pumped up, really excited, December 31st. But then January 1st, what happens? The work shows up. Like you get confronted with the fact that, oh, it's not enough to just. Like we all know, we all get a very visceral feeling of like, oh, motivation isn't enough because now all of a sudden, all these habits and things you wanted to change, even just working out, eating better, all the classics, right? Like December 31st, like, oh, let's get it, come on. And then January 1st, you realize you have to do the work to change. And it's like, oh, now this is a habit game. This is not a motivation game, because right now I'm looking at the cheeseburger. Like I see it, but I know that I need to eat. I know that I need to eat this, and all of a sudden, motivation isn't responsible for that. It's you, and you have to decide which direction are you going to go. That's the work showing up. So I think that's really good. And if you're feeling that in this season right here, like, hey, maybe just try to change your psychology a little bit and like choose to believe it's possible to create without inspiration, because a lot of people do it all the time. Like choose to believe, and choose other things, choose workflows, choose systems, choose habits, choose the controllables over the wispiness of motivation and inspiration. As appealing as it might be, and as widely used as it is, right? Feel inspired. You actually don't need to do that. Writing songs is really no different than going to the gym. It's just really not. It's no different than choosing the healthier food. It's like you're choosing to go into your studio or your home studio, pick up your guitar, open up that session to mix, open up that session to practice mastering. It's no different. You're choosing the action. And that's the habit you need to solidify. So I think that was great. And speaking of habits, right? Like core habits, like I think that's a big key here going forward. So if you're trying to change things going forward this next 6 months, you cannot be doing the same things you were. Isn't the definition of insanity is like doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results? Yeah, you're going to have to go boom and like change things for a second. So you might need to swap out your core habits, because here's the thing, friend, you already have them right now. I have them right now. Tyson has them right now. It doesn't mean they're all healthy and good, but we are existing currently with core habits, and it would be worth addressing what you've been consistently doing the last 6 months and where it got you to right now, and maybe keep some of them, but you're probably going to need to like let go of others and form new ones, just like saying no to the cheeseburger, yes to the salad, or whatever, what have you. So when it comes to core habits, Tyson, what are some things that help you? How do you think about changing things when you get to this point where you realize, oh, okay, what I'm doing hasn't been working, I'm going to need to change some things? How does that usually go down for you? What's been helpful?
Yeah, so I'm kind of one of those people too that love trying new things. So especially when it comes to like health and just like improvement of myself, I love all the trends, and so I have to be careful because if it's a trend, it's not a habit. And so I've tried, cold showers. I've tried doing HIIT workouts. I've tried doing bodybuilding workouts. I've been, I ran for a while. Nice. All these things, right? And I would like switch switch them all the time because I was like, oh, like, I would get motivated to try one new thing because I thought it was the best thing since sliced bread. Yeah. And then I would do it. And then, I would maybe get some results and maybe not. And then I would just get bored though, ultimately. And then I'd want to do something else. And so then I'd go this other direction. And then, I'd be keto for a while and then I would be vegetarian and then I would, be all plant-based and just all these things. Right. So what it ultimately came down to, though, I'd never really truly made that much progress in any one of those goals. And while some of them improved my life in small ways, they ultimately didn't really move the ball forward for me. So, and again, like we're coming back to, consistency is truly the way that you can get ahead. Because if you do anything consistently over a long period of time, you're going to beat out everybody else who just dies along the way. And you see just the bodies of, dead artists along the road. And you have to recognize that you probably knew a lot of those people. You probably looked up to some of those people, but ultimately they couldn't stand the test of time. But even if you're not as good as them, even if you're not as talented as them, if you continue to do these things over time, you will achieve bigger and better things than even your heroes did at a time. So, coming back to core habits, though, the biggest core habits that you have are going to be those habits that impact the rest of your day. For example, there was a while that I wasn't working out at all, and I would then not sleep as well. And then I didn't eat as well. And I didn't have as much energy throughout the day because I wasn't sleeping and eating well. And I wasn't working out. And so I wasn't like building muscle that then gives me energy throughout the day. And then my hormone balance got off, so then I didn't feel as good emotionally. And then that impacted my relationships, right? So this one habit of working out impacted the entire rest of my life. Yeah. And the minute I started working out again and being consistent with that was all of a sudden incredible because I was sleeping better. I was eating better because I was actually cared about my body. And then it improved my hormone balance. And then I, treated my wife better. And so then I had a better relationship with my wife. And then I ultimately had more energy to pursue after the goals that I had already set for myself. So, that's the impact that a core habit can ultimately have on you. And Nathan, I don't know if you want to add any, like, your experience with these core habits or any other examples of what a core habit could potentially be.
No, yeah, I would just say it's worth thinking through what kind of, and it's probably different for everybody. I think there's some common things that like just every human could benefit from. Again, I'm not like a scientist or anything like that, but things like, working out, eating well, sleeping enough. There's like some common things I think that cross the board. But what's the core habit? And for me, how I view a core habit is what's the one thing that I could do. If I just did one thing, it sets up a chain reaction of other good decisions following it to where it's not, you know what I'm saying? Like, what's the one thing? And then it helps me even because a lot of people are like, oh, I want to do this and do that and do this and do that and do that. Like, okay, what if you didn't think about the 17 different things you want to start doing now this year? What if there was one or two things that just by doing them affected your mental state, affected your health, affected your energy so much so that you just wanted to follow that. You wanted to like that chain reaction of, oh, I did this and now, I'll go ahead and do that. Oh, and I'll go ahead and do that. Like James Clear talks about this a lot in his book, Atomic Habits, of like choosing, the keystone habits, the same thing, a core habit that by just doing this one or two things, those in themselves prop up all the other good decisions you want to make through the rest of the day. So is it working out? Is it the reading in the morning? Is it meditation? Is it, let's think through what those things are and commit to doing that and watch how much easier it gets to make those other good decisions you want to make the rest of your day. I've definitely found that to be true. When I'm most sluggish, when I'm not at my best, when I feel creatively in a rut, I realize it's because I dropped that one habit or that habit or two, right? That usually keep me in a good state of mind through the rest of the day. So I would say develop your plan, right? Like write down that core habit, figure it out, and then schedule it on your calendar. Make that thing a repeatable thing that you can do and that you can show up for. And again, it's helpful. Pick one or two. There's no such thing as 17 core habits. That's against the name, right? Like what's the one or two, right? And a quick thing that you can do too is to try to make sure that you just have some sort of weekly check-in with yourself, right? To just like make sure that you're making this progress. I didn't do this for freaking ever, and I wish that I would have. Just a simple act, just 10 minutes, like at the end of Friday or whatever, and just be like, okay, how'd the week go? Did I hit all this stuff? Am I going where I want to go? Okay, cool. Did I not do it? Oh, that's why. And you can pinpoint, you're like, okay, I'm not going to repeat that next week, right? That's also something that can be super practical there.
Yeah, and this could be an actual like core habit unto itself. So for example, one thing that changed the entire game for me in my marriage, so if you are, if you have a spouse, a boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever that looks like for you, if you have somebody like that, do a weekly check-in with them. Because
love that.
We decided a while back, actually some of our friends, a couple of friends had told me and my wife that they had started doing what they referred to as marriage meetings. And then we were like, oh yeah, let's try it out. And that in and of itself, that one habit of meeting weekly, we would go get coffee or something and make a little date of it. And we would sit down for 45 minutes and just talk about like how things were going. Like, did we have any issues this week? Like, what was going well? What was not going well? What things do we have coming up this week that we need to prepare for? Like, what plans or desires do you have? And all of these things, that core habit in our relationship changed everything about how we showed up and, encouraged that honest communication back and forth between myself and my wife to ensure that we were moving in the direction we wanted to in our relationship. And this weekly check-in, right, can be applied to all these other areas. Check in like, oh, did I write a song this week like I meant to? Did I accomplish, the content that I wanted to create this week, etc. So these weekly check-ins can be a core habit, or just even planning your next week out and understanding like where my priority is this week and writing that in your calendar. So I think it's super powerful. I just wanted to add that little snippet in there because it has been, again, it's been a huge thing for me and my wife to be able to sit down, have that meeting once a week. And that has changed everything about how we show up in our marriage. Yeah. So let's wrap up this conversation by giving you a couple, super actionable things. First of all, make success the action, not the outcome. So we've talked about this episode. Make sure you're focusing on the actions you need to take, not the outcome that you hope to achieve through those actions. Second thing is, super powerful tool. If you need accountability, there's this amazing tool called stick.com, STIKK.com. I used this when I was trying to start my YouTube channel because I knew that I wasn't mature enough to be consistent and be disciplined to create a video every single week. So the very first year that I decided I was going to start my YouTube channel, I set up myself an accountability coach on stick.com. I set up one of my buddies down in LA to be my accountability coach. And what stick.com does is that it sets up this system where my coach would look on my YouTube channel and he would say, oh, did Tyson release a video this week? Yes or no? And if he said, no, Tyson did not release a YouTube video this week, then stick.com would then charge my credit card $15 and send it to a charity of my choice. And the powerful thing about this is you could actually set up an anti-charity. What is an anti-charity? Well, an anti-charity is a charity that you don't agree with. So say you're anti-gun, and you can set up to donate to the NRA, the National Rifle Association.
Oh my goodness.
Say you are a hardcore Republican. You can set it up to then donate money to Bernie Sanders or some other political figure that you don't like. Therefore, it creates an additional motivation. So you have fear of financial loss that's on your side, that's motivating you to complete your habit. And then you also have the external factor of supporting a cause that you don't actually agree with. So,
oh my goodness,
super powerful tool. I think that I credit my whole YouTube channel to stick.com because I wouldn't have done it if I didn't set this up, and I knew that about myself. So I was actually smart in that one way. But anyway, if you want to use stick.com to stick to your goals for the rest of the year, that's STIKK.com. I am not sponsored by stick.com. I just think it's a super helpful tool, and I have seen amazing change in my own life by using this tool. So with that, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening to this episode. I certainly hope that you got a ton out of it and you have the actions now that you need to take, or the planning that you need to do to crush your goals for the rest of 2024. And if you want to leave us a review, and in your review, leave us a note of what your goal is for the rest of 2024 and what action you're going to implement to achieve that goal.
Yes.
In your review, leave us that information, because writing your goal down is much more likely you're going to actually go out and implement that. So make sure that you're doing yourself a favor, leave us a review, and also for yourself by committing to that action for the rest of the year to achieve your goals and crush them for the last 6 months of 2024. All right.
Let's go.
Thanks again for watching, listening, and we will see you in the next iteration of the prolific Super Producer Podcast.